Could the HR function escape the Attila of the 21st century, namely the digital horde? You know the answer. That's right. Digital tools that could ease tasks related to people management and, in turn, help to boost the digital transformation of organizations like yours are already out there. They go by the name of Human Resources Information Systems, or HRIS. In fact, these solutions proved to be extremely valuable during the COVID-19 pandemic, as they supported organizations in the management of teams remotely in a flexible and effective way. Moreover, they offer many possibilities, including allowing employees to manage their own data, a great feature that would support many HR processes. In this episode of TechTalk, Louise and I talk with Shanika Charles, HRIS Director at PwC Luxembourg, about human resources information systems, including their capabilities and how they are evolving, but also the challenges of implementing these tools within an organization. So, let's jump right into it.
Welcome to a new episode of Tech Talk. This is Season 5, Episode 8. Welcome, Carla.
Welcome, Luis.
How are you feeling today? Today is super beautifully sunny.
It is.
And
so
deliciously cold.
I'm in a good mood. Well, that's not so delicious, but...
I know, I love the cold. And today we have...
You do?
I love the cold. I love the sunny cold, though. But let's introduce our guest today. I give you the room, Carla.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Today's guest is Shanika Charles. She is Advisory Director at PwC Luxembourg. Welcome, Shanika.
Thank you. It's great to be with both of you on this, like you said, sunny, beautiful day in Luxembourg.
Exactly.
So
Plus, you just told me, before off microphone, she told me she comes from the Caribbean. And yes. I asked Barbados, and she said, right next, 15 kilometers. It's Saint Vincent?
Yes, St. Vincent. Sunny, warm, beautiful St. Vincent.
Because, Shanika, this is a true story. Someone asked me, where is she from? And I said, Rihanna's place.
Close enough.
And someone asked me, are they friends? They study together? Maybe. I don't know. They are small islands anyway.
Not quite. I know the Caribbean is extremely tiny, but we don't all know everybody. So
that would be cool, though, I guess.
Yes, very true.
So, Carla, could you please kick it off with the first question?
Sure.
Thank you.
So, did we mention the topic of
I'm so sorry. I'm so excited about the sun and the cold. Yes, the topic of today's, the chapter, the episode is called The One on Technology to Enhance the HR Function. And in more particularly, we will be talking about HRIS. That stands for?
Human Resources Information Systems.
Voila.
Fantastic.
Is that right?
That's really good. I'm very impressed, Carla.
Great.
So let's kick this off.
So the first question is HRIS versus HRIS system versus HRIS software versus HRMIS.
Oh, wow.
Oh, Luis,
you
are responsible for this one. So let's start with the basics. Yes. Are they the same?
Yes. I mean, it's people call it differently, but ultimately it's talking about platforms or software or systems which enable human resources. That's ultimately what all of that abbreviation means. So It is all the same.
So they're just fancy names?
They're just a preference. Some people say human resource information systems. Some people say human resource software. Some say human resource management software. But it is ultimately all the same. It's systems that supports the HR function or HR business.
It just came to my mind, this out of the blue questions. Is there any moment in time when we can track back and say, okay, the HRIS systems started in early 2000s, maybe? Do you have any idea of when they...
There've always been systems to support HR. I think we moved away from it being primarily paper-based sort of in the early 90s. Okay. So it's been evolving over time. Now, of course, we're looking at cloud-based technology where you no longer need to have those very expensive, IT tools, in the corner downstairs in IT, with all of the plugs. So there has been a natural evolution over time. And I'd say that sort of kick-started in the 90s.
Interesting. Can I take the second?
Of course.
Yes. Okay. Then, well, let's go from record keeping to the integration of enterprise resource planning. You may know it as ERP, exactly. Or the use of AI, for instance, or real-time data. How was the situation of these technologies before COVID?
That's a great question. I think especially maybe time tracking. Of course, employees used to have to come in and badge out. So the company, they're aware of, the time people come into work, the time they leave, especially to pay overtime. Now, of course, with COVID, it is a different functionality. Now companies have implemented HRIS tools, which allow you to input your start and end time directly, maybe on your phone, right? Rather than, of course, having to swipe in and out because of the hybrid ways of working, which has emerged over time because of COVID.
That's an excellent example. I think we have that one here.
Yes, absolutely. And it's, again, it's a kind of a time tracking tool where you can go into your phone and put in your start and end time.
But then it's heavily based on trust.
Absolutely. I think one of the things we have seen throughout this whole pandemic, and I'm aware that we're not necessarily at the end of it just yet, but we have seen companies having to trust their employees to do work from home. And, we have seen, I think, ultimately at PwC, we have seen absences and things like that drop significantly because people are much more, willing to kind of, work through. Even if you've got a bit of a headache, you can log on. Maybe keep your camera off if you're not looking as fantastic. But true. We have developed a lot of trust in employees, and I think ultimately that's the way forward.
Now you talk about cameras. Do you think it's a more male-female thing? Because I see most of my female colleagues, they just don't show up. Well, they are there, but they hide the camera.
Yes. I think it's both. I think it's definitely both male and female. I've seen that across my team, and I think if you're having a bit of a rough morning, people keep their camera off and plow through. So yes.
But what you mentioned is very, very interesting, and it matches what the situation in Luxembourg. Because last week I think I was this horrible traffic we all have to face.
Yes.
But the mornings in Luxembourg, if you are not from here, they are insane. So, there was this news saying that the absenteeism has reduced tremendously over the last 15, 18 months because people work from home.
Correct, absolutely. And again, ultimately, you can grab a cup of tea and you could kickstart your day significantly earlier. And also as well, some people may start a little bit later and finish later in the day. So it really does enable flexibility like we've never really seen it before. And I ultimately think, as I mentioned, it really is the way forward. Yeah.
Thank you. So, Carlita, the third one, please.
Yes. So COVID has definitely changed the way we think of the workplace and hence the way we understand and manage HR matters. So how is the pandemic more concretely influencing HRIS? Is a new type of technology emerging from it? Technological developments.
Yeah, no, I it's a really great question, by the way, Carla. I do believe we're seeing new technology emerging, especially in the space of artificial intelligence and robotics. So ultimately, you may have people come in to do interviews into the building. Now, some companies are using robotics to facilitate the recruitment process. So, you're not necessarily having to speak directly to someone. And I know it's kind of a bit out there, and we do also still need some human-to-human interaction, but at least, supporting that initial first stage of an interview, we're seeing a lot of these robotics and AI coming into play now more than ever before. Yeah.
I think it's a guess, but when a company gets tons of CVs, probably an AI-powered tool maybe reading things.
Correct.
Like that? Okay.
Exactly. Just do the short listing, which is fantastic. And that was used before, but again, I think we're seeing a kind of a much faster usage of artificial intelligence now more than ever to again reduce that whole human to human interaction where it can be done via a machine. So.
Interesting. But in your opinion, is this we are walking the right track when it comes to HRIS evolution? If you had the power, if you were a goddess, would you change something?
Would I change something? Oh, that's a really good question. I hadn't thought about that. Would I change something in the HRIS?
Or maybe everything is perfect.
I know. I really like how things are evolving. Again, the usage of cloud technology, robotics. I don't think I'd change anything right at this point in time. There's nothing I think is missing from the market at this point.
Or maybe we haven't yet lived, the entire transformation process. Because when you mentioned robots or artificial intelligence may help the process, I say, okay, great. But I think we need a sort of balancing act.
Correct.
Let's see where we go. But if 80% of the process in the future will be AI based, I think I will start a strike now on the street saying, we don't want that. I want a human now.
Exactly.
We don't want that.
Exactly. And you hit the nail on the head, Louis, where you talked about, striking a balance. I think absolutely, technology is our friend. It is to make, task which takes quite a bit of time, like administrative tasks, if it could be done quicker, we can most certainly encourage those tools. But I'm a big believer in human-to-human interaction, right? Whether it's for strategy building, whether it's for team building, we have to also, like I said, really strike that balance. So, yeah.
Do you happen to know Slack? This Slack, or this sort of more than a
project management tool.
Yes, but I think they started chatting. Yes, like
management.
a team chatting tool, and I guess they are more and more introducing, certain technologies. Probably like a voice assistant. Can be a voice assistant considered as an HRS?
Yeah, absolutely. We can have, voice assistants. We can have, they do have this in some of the platforms already where you speak and it kind of helps you navigate how to maybe do a certain process. So that is already there.
Okay.
Companies are also using VR, I think it's called. So again, in order to support maybe onboarding processes, where for example, and I know PwC, we already use that.
That's true.
During the pandemic, where we had new recruits who we would have been able to give a tour around the building.
Really?
We weren't able to do that. So
Louise, you don't remember?
Virtual.
We posted on social media.
Yeah, virtual reality.
Oh yes, we did.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so we were able to do that, so you can get a kind of a tour around the building, and that is all part of that HRIS suite that companies can implement. So yeah,
interesting.
Indeed. Yeah. And that leads us to the next question, which is the so-called leaders buy-in. How to build the case for business decision makers to authorize funds for a new or upgraded HRIS, considering that HR isn't commonly considered a profit center.
Yeah. That is a hot question.
That
is about money, and everything about money is hot.
So how to convince leaders that it's a must?
Yeah, that's a really good question again. And it's something I've been doing for the past sort of 15 years, convincing or trying to advise companies on really the benefit realization of implementing, best of breed HR systems. Of course, they have the price ranges based on the number of employees you have and which tool you'd like to go to. So you can have a small system, an HRIS system for around 80,000, and you could go up to about 2 million. Again, it's really based on what you're looking for. What if it's a global company, then you may potentially spend a little bit more. But really, one of the things we do is really understand what is the company trying to achieve. If they want HR to become much more strategic in nature and to be a strategic business partner to the organization, then we must allow employees to manage their own data. So things such as updating your home address when you move or your marital status, these are things people can easily do on their phone, or do an invoice, well, not a lot of us are traveling a lot on business.
When you move from one place to the other,
yes,
you put your new certificate.
Correct, and you could do all of that
your
on
bank
your phone.
account details for the payslip. Very important.
Yeah, you see your payslip online, and really again allowing systems to be in place that employees are used to using in their everyday life, right? Like the Amazons, the Facebook. People want to be able to manage their own data. So again, moving those administrative tasks and shifting it as well to the proper end users, and really allowing HR to have, the space to be strategic. So a lot of companies, when they hear that, they typically say, well, what's the cost of this? And then we can talk about which system would ultimately meet their needs.
Well, without really mentioning the system we use at PwC Luxembourg, I now have access to an awesome dashboard, for instance, where I can see my team.
Correct.
And the absences and the holidays they have asked and the ones they haven't.
Yeah.
And then an email from Luigi comes and says, you have to take holidays off or days off because,
Correct.
Excellent. But now you are mentioning, you have mentioned things that have to do with data or data. Now, it also calls for a new way to understand data governance and also I wouldn't say human governance because it's not the proper expression, but trusting people that they will actually do it.
Yes.
So based on your, business experience and client experience, how is a company adopts this new way of doing things, which calls for a different way of understanding also governance and hierarchy and all that?
Yeah, so especially when you implement a system like the one we haven't mentioned the name, but it really enables empowerment of end users. It's again really saying what are the benefit realizations or the values that could be gained for everybody in the organization. And a big part of that is doing change management and training. So once people are upskilled, once they know how to do it, once they understand why they're doing it, then the adoption is quite seamless. When I say seamless, I'm talking about 85%, right? There is always that 10% that prefer to submit something by paper, right? But ultimately, again, once people understand why there is a need to do this, and the benefits for them, ultimately, I don't want to print off a certificate and have to send it to HR if I can just take a screenshot and upload it into the system.
Now that you mentioned that, this is a offside anecdote, but we are changing, the meal vouchers to cards.
Yes.
And, there is a lot of, buzz and people saying, no, we want to remain.
People don't like change.
Yes. Exactly. But that's an example. Very little change in how, all the little problem is producing. I'm happy with the car though.
Yeah,
me too.
I'm really happy.
Again, for me, you mentioned it. I think the benefit again, maybe because I've been working in this space for a long time, but I think, I no longer have to walk downstairs to get the papers. I no longer have to come into the office on a specific day. It's loaded straight away. I can see how much I spend. I get a notification. It's beautiful.
Yes, beautiful. You have the card in your wallet all the time. You don't need to carry the paper.
You open the app and you can see how much the money left.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. So,
wow.
yeah. But great reference.
Yeah, but it's similar. Just an HRIS is a lot bigger, you know, as a change. And of course, change always infuses, I want to say infuses is the word, but generates, there's resistance. A sort of fear, resistance.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think ultimately people get used to it.
Yes. Yeah, it is true.
We don't like change, but we adapt.
Yes, that is
human nature.
Absolutely. Or you get left behind, unfortunately.
That's also true. So what about upskilling or reskilling teams adopting and adapting to these new HRIS software? I mean, you mentioned a little bit, but
yes.
How does it work?
Yeah, no, it's another good question. Some of the things I have seen as part of the implementation of such systems is not a lot of emphasis is placed on, again, change management and training. And you know, stakeholder management, and what needs to happen is as I mentioned, some of these systems are quite costly, and 6 months in, if you haven't trained the employees and also say to them what benefits will be gained, then people ultimately, if you have old systems which are not decommissioned, they go back to the old ways of working, and then you have this tool which is not fully utilized. So I'm an avid believer in, you know, really focusing on change management at the very beginning stages of the implementation, so you have enough time to upskill people, whether it's managers, you know, whether it's employees, really having enough time to get people on board, through training. So
yes.
The next question is about constructive critiques, but I will can I have my constructive critique as well?
Of course.
Thank you,
This is
Shanika.
a free podcast.
You know, what I feel is sometimes these upskilling programs, not the ones specifically dedicated to HRIS, but in general, they start like very enthusiastic. And at some point, they get lost in translation. So in the beginning, let's say, the first part where everybody's, hey, let's do it, everybody's in. But I think a true upskilling process needs to last over time, over certain time. Yes. That's what I meant. So they start, everybody's happy, okay, let's do it. And then after 2-3 months, you say, okay, I think they are good now. Yeah. Probably they aren't.
Yeah.
So that's maybe a comment. But what do you think? It needs, when you say upskilling the people adopting the tool, does it last? Do you have any idea or recommendation of, hey, don't do it just all in once, but over time?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It needs to be over time. Before you implement the platform, again, people need to know how to use it. And then one of the things needs to happen is whether you do a survey, 3 months in, 6 months in, to do a temperature feel on how things are going.
Interesting.
Right? That is something I truly believe needs to happen. And also whether or not some companies do what they call a roadshow. So it comes on the change management. So in 6 months' time, you may have something downstairs in the lobby saying, come and have a look at the system. Let us know.
Okay.
Yeah, let us know if you have any questions or any challenges. And then again, so you're keeping it in people's minds. It's fresh in people's minds, and people feel comfortable coming and having a chat, saying, maybe I don't know how to use this app. Could you help me? 6 months in. So the first year is absolutely critical. So as you said, it's not about training once and then think it's going to work, but again, having touch points throughout the course of the year to see how people are adopting to the tool, and then making any necessary changes, which is coming off of the back of that survey or feedback.
Maybe a sort of internal hotline.
Exactly.
Someone you can talk to. Yeah,
absolutely. And even I'm not a big fan of necessarily having static documentation on your intranet, because things change and you'll have to update it. And if it's not updated, then it becomes obsolete very quickly. But big fan of these road shows I mentioned.
No, I think it's a very, very cool idea.
Yeah. And here we have regular informational sessions as well.
Exactly.
With the updates.
Short,
and I think that's very...
short and neat and to the point. You mean at lunchtime?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very useful, I think.
Great.
I have a question
Okay,
how customizable can these systems be? And for instance, if there's something that doesn't really apply, can you remove it or can you add? Because I'm sure that there are some things that don't apply to a company.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm currently looking at a system which a company they've had it for about 2 years, and they want to make some changes to it. And ultimately, it requires a lot of customization. But for me, I always typically push back on customizations which are not regulatory, which are not meeting local requirements. Because when you look, especially if you're a global company, you want to make sure that there's a level of standardization across the group so that you can run reports and you can mirror what's going on in each entity appropriately. And as you can imagine, if you build in a lot of customization, then it becomes a little bit challenging, one, to report properly across the group and get the same data to make any strategic decision, and two, it becomes a nightmare to maintain if you have customization, and expensive, absolutely. So I'm all for keeping it as standard and simple as possible, because it's easier to use when it's simple. And if there are customization needed, which some of these platforms do allow for customization, but really have a strategy of when customization will be incorporated into the platform.
Carla, following a dictatorial manner, I changed the last question.
Okay, so go ahead.
And why? It's because it's because we have been already talking about AI, and I think it's like a little bit repetitive. So it's more linked to regulation. Shanika, you mentioned you wouldn't change things that are linked to regulations, and what always my mind recalls is the GDPR. So HRIS systems, of course, gather tons of personal information. I guess all of them are compliant with the GDPR if they want to operate in Europe.
Yes.
Okay, but in a global company, and because you mentioned tailored things, and the United States has a different reality, or Asia has a different reality. So in that case, how does GDPR work? Is GDPR influencing the other ones because this is the toughest regulation? You see what I mean?
No, I do understand. A lot of these systems, they have, whether it's kind of lawyers, a part of their organization when they're building these platforms, or they liaise with a legal company to ensure that any necessary maybe data field which may be required in Europe is there. One of the things which came into play, I'd say about 5 to 7 years ago, was around removal of employee data who have left the company within a given time span. So they would have added in that configuration into the platform, into the HRIS solution, to allow for what they call like a data purging. So allow for people in Europe, to HR departments, to remove data fields. So they always keep abreast of the changing dynamics in the region or countries in which they operate within, and then of course add in those additional configuration maybe through an update, whether it's once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year. I know, of course, like in the US, there's an emphasis on equal opportunity reports, on gender,
quotas,
race, all of that. So they would have those fields specific for the US and Canada so that they can run reports. So these systems are very good, as I mentioned, tapping into the legal and regulatory requirements in the countries in which they operate so that they can add those elements in.
Interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting. I had what makes no sense, maybe my question, but HRA systems are also useful for student management. could be?
Yeah, for student management. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of these systems, they have a student version for university.
Okay.
Absolutely. They have, and especially more recently with schools and universities, having to work in a very different manner as a result of COVID. So you have these systems which allow for breakout rooms. So you're on, you have all of the students, maybe 100 students online, but then you have to get in groups, and it now allows for these breakout sessions, which is fantastic. So yes, so they can be used across all industries. So financial industry, manufacturing industry, universities, hospitals. Yes, exactly. The military. So yes, so they span across all industry. Of course, there are some things that have to be put in place, especially in the financial industry, to make sure, again, there's an element of data security. Yeah.
Do you want to add any other question, Carla? Because I have one more question.
No, I don't. So go ahead.
And it's about you.
Oh, my goodness. I'm just so used to talking about HRIS.
No, it's because, when we talk to professionals like you, we always wonder. I mean, I personally do. I think Carla as well. How did you end up in the field? Because you may have a very nice story. I mean, what is your bachelor degree originally?
Yeah. So I did my bachelor's in London in business studies and law. And then, of course, doing that bachelor's degree, there's human resources, right? Thought, this might be interesting. But I wasn't sure whether or not I wanted to become a lawyer or work in business. So I thought I'll do both, and then I'll decide at the end of my bachelor's degree. And I didn't want to go into law. I wanted to go into business and human resources.
You made the right decision.
I think I did. And then, of course, I did my master's in human resource management and organization analysis. So I'm one of the very few people who have studied in my field, and I'm doing exactly what I've studied. So I think I looked at a survey and it said, I think 25% or 30% of people go into the field in which they study. So I don't know if that's fortunate or unfortunate for me. So there you go.
Yeah, I am one of the ones that didn't.
Yes.
Did you study history or something like that?
At all. I'm an engineer.
Interesting.
But I always say I'm a frustrated architect.
Yes.
Wow.
So thank you, Shanika.
Thank you very much.
It was very enjoyable, and we have learned, every time we learn a lot about what technology is doing for the world. And so I appreciate really your time, and all the best. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you both. It was absolutely enjoyable, and I always like talking about, my field with anybody who likes to listen. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yes. So, a pleasure. And this is Tech Talk, Carla. Technology made simple.
Over a cup of coffee.
Or what do you like to drink?
Yeah, I'm a herbal tea kind of lady. So
okay.
Yes, so herbal tea.
Technology made simple over a herbal cup of tea. Okay. Thanks a lot. Ciao. Until the next one. Ciao, ciao.
And that's all for today. This is Tech Talk, technology made simple over a cup of coffee. Thank you for listening, and until the next episode.